and seeing it as this opportunity for healing rather than, oh, I just need to make this stop.
Yeah.
Because trying to make it stop is only going to perpetuate it. And, and this makes me think about the co-regulation. What if we were to co-regulate with the triggers?
Mhm.
And rather than trying to encourage someone or a child, just breathe. What if we just sat there with them and we're breathing? Because if children do, if they model what we do rather than what we say, and we were just there and very present, we didn't even have to say anything. We could just be breathing, making it audible, whatever, and just sit there and just breathe. And it takes a little bit, but eventually their system is going to link up with that system.
Hi, conscious parents. It's Carrie here, and I am here with a little info about raising our mindful kids. I've got some tips and tricks about breaking free of the box and becoming who you are, and teaching your kids how to do that along the way. Join us. Hi there, and welcome back. I'm so excited to connect with you all today. I have a wonderful special guest, Frankie Sokhash, that I'm so excited to connect with. I've been following her on Instagram, and if you don't, you should check her out in the show notes because she's amazing and she's helped me so much with my motherhood journey and my spiritual awakening that I've been feeling. So, Frankie is a somatic guide and mentor helping women to birth their creative gifts, bring their medicine to the world, and embrace the full spectrum of themselves and their emotions while doing so. And that pretty much describes my year. My word for this year has been passion for 2024. And I feel like I started out with passion, and just last year and this year just had this huge spiritual awakening through motherhood and connection. And it's been amazing. I was actually just telling my husband yesterday how this era has calmed my brain down, and now I can hear my heart, and it really just feels this powerful love toward him. So it's just this reconnection that I've been having with myself, with my husband, a little bit with my parents. I feel like that's going on, and then my kids. So I love what you're doing for others.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast and onto this platform. Super inspired by what you're doing and the conscious parenting and spreading the word and giving parents tools to be able to work through whatever they need to work through in order to be able to bring more of that consciousness and more of that awareness into our daily lives, because that's like the bread and butter of humanity and of reality, right? It's like our
Yeah.
foundation of what we've created here on Earth and what we're going to continue to be able to create on Earth. So, yeah, I'm super stoked to be here. And I had a word for this year, and I think it was devotion or dedication,
Mm.
one of those D words. And yeah, my year has also been just like really filled with a lot of relationship building and rediscovering my relationship to my mom, to my body, to my future children and my partner. And yeah, it must be something in the air.
I love it. Yeah, it must be something with our charts or what we're meant to work through in this era. It's so powerful, and it's interesting that you were talking about connection with your parents. And I think for me, you had mentioned beforehand, I was reading, you had talked about your tribe and how we were not meant to raise children alone. And in a vulnerable piece of myself, I have been feeling so lonely in parenting. That's why I started Heart to Heart Parents, was I felt like I was the only one raising these gifted, spirited, highly sensitive kids. And um, it's been hard for my husband and I to find our tribe because we feel like we're so different than others. When, as I'm starting this, I'm like, oh my gosh, there are so many people like this. Do you have any pieces that you would say about maybe like calling in our tribe, finding people that accept us for us? I think it was like this huge movement that my husband and I discovered. We had thought we had to be this box version of what parents should look like. Especially after the pandemic, when we were holed up with our kids. We loved that piece because we really got to connect with our kids. But when we went out into the world, we were like, we're going to make friends and we're going to discover, it's going to be wonderful. We've been locked in. And so we almost became this box version of what other parents think that we should look like. and we weren't letting
Mm.
our true selves out. And then once we did, it was like everybody disappeared. But I think it was because we needed to start new. And we ended 2023 at this version of peace, which was both of our word for the year. It was really funny. We ended up with the same word, but we felt peaceful at the end. We changed our kids' school. We let go of old relationships. And now we're at this era where we're trying to bring in, and we have a really hard time connecting with others and finding other people in our parenting
Mm.
journey.
Yeah, I feel that. There was a time when I was dating someone and surrounded by a lot of people who I just didn't feel like I really truly resonated. I was like my spirituality was in the closet still. Like I hadn't really fully embraced who I knew I was on the inside. And I didn't feel confident. I didn't feel comfortable talking about the things that I really wanted to talk about. And it felt like I was living this kind of secret life. And I think this is like a really important part in everyone's journey, right? Is being able to acknowledge I'm no longer really in resonance with who I've become and some of the people that I'm surrounded by. And there's like that leap of faith, right? Like in the hero's journey, there's always this kind of like this leap that we have to take off the cliff and hope and pray. And sometimes it comes with a lot of difficulties and challenges. And I felt like after I had moved on from this group of people that I had grown so close to, and don't get me wrong, like I still love them. They played a huge role in my becoming, but it came to a point where it wasn't serving, and it was almost like the pain of sticking around became so overwhelming to me that I had to. And then it was a while of just feeling like loneliness. And I think that is part of the process, but continuing to walk the path and continuing to walk in this way where I know that I'm true to who I am on the inside. I know that I'm true to who I am at the heart, right, of my heart and soul. And I do believe that where I'm going and where I'm headed, there are people. And continuing to dedicate ourselves to that path. It's like dedicating ourselves to something that we can't quite see yet, or we can't quite grasp it yet. And it's like being able to connect to that and just continuing to walk the path. That is what attracts the tribe. That's what attracts the people that we're looking for or that we know are out there, and the people who are also doing the same thing. It's magnetic when we can overcome who we thought we were and put ourselves in those situations where we have to just burn in our own fire of passion and desire. This is who I am.
Yeah.
And this is who I'm not willing to be anymore. And with love and compassion to that version and who we were and the people who were around us, and being willing to take that leap. And it's not easy, it's scary, but I think that played a really big role, is being willing to go through that piece of I'm not being totally true to who I know I am, and then being willing to be lonely and learn through the loneliness, right? Because what is loneliness besides maybe not really fully connecting with who we really are and like the world all around us, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's interesting because I think about when I was a child, all of our kids are so conscious. My kids are very conscious, and I was a very conscious child. And I would connect, or I would attempt to connect heart to heart with all of my friends. I would be the best friend, and I wouldn't always receive the same version that I was putting out. And so I feel as an adult, I thought, ooh, I have to mask or give this version of me to be a friend. And then finally, as I came into my own this past year or two, it's, oh, no, I need this other, I need to be me, and I need to be a connected friend. So I'm thinking in my mind, my kids have to go through that as well, because I can see my kids and they are very conscious in their friendships. They are very devoted friends. So I guess it's probably
Mm.
something that they'll have to go through at some point.
Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting one because I believe that we all have our own journey, right? We all
Yep.
come here and we're here to
Yeah.
just we have to learn, and
Yeah.
there are some things that we can't really tell children. They have to figure it out on their
Yep.
own.
Yep.
But then how much of it is like how can we teach them some of the things that we've gone through, right?
Mhm.
And maybe encouraging them to still keep their heart open when the world around them is encouraging them to close up their heart because it's too much or because
Yep.
people don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And because I know that story, like what you were just saying about having this big open heart and feeling like we had to adjust, because I think I say, like, on one hand, I feel like it's really rare to meet people with that big, wide open heart. But then
Mhm.
at the same time, I feel like it's just perspective
Mm.
and being willing to like look around and see. And also, yeah, like how can we teach our children to still remain open, regardless of what other children may be encouraging them or teaching them, or what their teachers may be teaching them, even. And I
Yeah.
think this all really comes back to just emotional intelligence, being able to understand emotions and being able to understand triggers and being able to understand projections, right? Like the way someone responds to how I love them, it doesn't say anything about me. So if I'm big, wide, open hearted and someone can't handle it, or they get mad, or they attack me, or and then I want to shut down, it's my responsibility to not shut down, or to move through it, right? Or to discover what is it about it that's actually making me want to shut down, because
Mm.
it's not the other person. And so being able to untangle the mess that I think a lot of humans have found themselves in, this kind of like emotional trigger dynamic relationships, everything is so conditional. I need you to do this so I can be this. And
Mhm.
yeah, just I think the emotional intelligence is really important, and especially for children.
Yep. Yeah, there's so much of I think we're really realizing and recognizing these pieces and teaching them the emotional intelligence pieces. I have a 6-year-old daughter and 9-year-old son, and we moved them to a social emotional focused school. And
Mm,
there's pieces of it that really help them with those emotional intelligence and also empowering them in their sensitivity, in their big open hearts, empowering them to understand how they connect with others. And it's been really wonderful for my two kids. But yeah, I love that. I think as we're working to teach them about their emotional responses, that's a huge one that I've been doing as a mom. And this is a little bit off topic, but I was thinking yesterday, I was thinking about how I teach my kids. We've been working lately. My kids will have a sensory response to the world around them. As emotional, highly sensitive, empath kids, there can be triggers or things that feel, and it's oftentimes like a sensory trigger or something that's just overwhelming. When they're sick, when they're tired, it's even worse. So they will erupt. And in that moment, they'll say things that they don't mean to trigger my husband and I, because they've learned, they're very smart. So they've learned what these triggers are. And for me, one of my triggers is if my son hits my daughter, it's a huge mama bear trigger. Or if he hits my husband, oftentimes he doesn't hit as much, but so he'll use words to hit now. That's where he's learned thinking about these. So that's one thing, is talking about those triggers. I would love to come back to that for moms. But also, I've been talking to my kids about that is a response. That's your physical response to what's going on in your system. And that is not who your true spirit and soul and person is. You have a beautiful spirit. You have a beautiful soul. I see it and I know how you love people and you take care of others. And that's your response. Do you want to name it? Let's name it like silly monster, or let's name it something, because I want you to not identify with that response. I want you to identify with who you truly are. And I've noticed that my kids really love that, and they take to it. And I hear less, I'm a bad kid, or what I did was makes me a bad person. It's really interesting. My son will now say, I'm feeling triggered. Can we turn on the audiobook to help me calm myself down? Or I'm going to go play with my Legos because I'm feeling triggered. And I love the way kids are using these tools and they know how to identify it. So I wanted to
mm,
share that piece of
I
what we've
love
been
that.
working
Yeah.
on.
Oh, that's so cool. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. And just identifying with that moment and that energy, right? It's like this buildup of energy and this explosion, and like they got to get it out. And sometimes, like, we use a lot of our occupational therapists have taught us tools of bringing them into their body again, right? Grounding them, like hitting them with a pillow. We have pillow fights, or like throwing them onto the bed in a soft manner to just help them like reset. But yeah, not identifying those moments as who their soul and their person is.
Yeah, totally. I also think like it's to be able to watch adults do it, because I'm just reflecting on when I was a child. And bless my mother. I love her so much. And she would try to tell me to do something. And it's like, you don't do it. Why should I? So it's children watch, they're watching. They're not doing what they're told, they're doing what is modeled to them,
Mm.
which I think is really fascinating. I have a story that while you were talking was coming up, and I want to share it. And it feels really vulnerable to share this story. It's about me and my partner. He, I don't even know, I can't even remember what the thing was, but I kept doing this thing and he'd be like, stop. And I'm like, still doing it. A little kid. This is like a kind of a little kid dynamic. And he's just, stop it, stop it. And this is over, a period of time where I just kept doing this thing and kept doing this thing. And I wasn't really listening to him when he said stop. Like I didn't take it seriously. I didn't think it was like that big of a deal until it got to a point where he like started, grabbing my arms and like kind of play wrestling, but also wrestling to the point where it's stop.
Mhm.
And it got heated to the point where I was getting triggered. I was like, why does it feel like it's getting to a point of violence? I didn't understand. And we had this, not necessarily a blow up, but this moment of what is going on? Why are you acting this way towards me? And it came to the point where it was like, because I wasn't actually listening to him and hearing him when he was saying, stop, please don't do that. And I wasn't taking it seriously. Like
Mm.
his only response was like, okay, now I need to get physical. Now I need to get, I'm not going to say violent because that's a really intense word. It's not
Sure.
violence. He's not hitting me.
Mhm.
He used to do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, so he really likes to do those weird moves. But it was getting to the point where I was getting triggered and I was getting to this place of remembering when I was a child, when I would blow up and I would freak out
Mhm.
and get physical and start
Mhm.
screaming and hitting and doing whatever I needed to do in order to be heard. And it
Mhm.
was this moment of, oh my God, I can't believe that I'm doing that, right? Like, I'm the
Mhm.
one creating this. I'm the one who's
Mhm.
continuously just pushing and pushing, doing this thing and not listening to him when he's very gently and kindly
Mhm.
saying, please stop. And then it gets to this point of kind of a physical altercation.
Mhm.
And oh, wow, okay, like I wasn't hearing you.
Mhm.
And for, I guess, a human, I say human because it could be children, it could be adults, right? If our boundaries are being crossed and we're not actually being heard, like sometimes we have to take it to that level in order to be heard because sometimes our words just aren't enough, which is unfortunate. It hit me. It's unfortunate that he, who is such a loving and kind and generous person and partner, to be saying like, please stop, and I'm over here just still like nagging on it and egging it on. And oh, wow. Yeah. That, that feels bad. That feels really bad on either end, right? It felt really bad for me to be on the end of, oh, I was the one who kept pushing it
Mhm.
and encouraging it and pushed it to that extent.
Yes. Yes. I think there's the idea of we all have our capacity bucket of how much we can fill it with demands, right? And sometimes we cannot verbalize why our bucket is completely full and spilling out. And so I think of that for kids, they can't always say, this is overwhelming to me, or I have way too many activities after school. I need to play outside on 1 day or 2 days a week. This is too much. So, yeah, trying that, having that connection with our kids to understand, like, this is what you're overreacting a lot lately, or you're feeling like very explosive lately. What is it that's triggering you? Or can we figure out how to reduce the demands on your system too?
Yeah, and you say that like kids don't have the vocabulary or have the
Mhm.
really ability to speak in that way, and I barely do.
Yeah.
I can barely, I'm triggered right now. I
Mhm.
still get into these moods of like where I snap and I go back into these patterns, and it's, yeah, how do we remember in the moment? And if I'm modeling for other people around me and I'm going through it, how do we do it? How do we do it together? This is the question. Like, how do we all do it together?
Yep. Yeah, because there's so much that the kids bring up in us that we may not have known was there, which has been like this whole parenting experience for me. I did not, but it was only in this past year where I started to realize and see it. And I think it gets easier to recognize those. Oh, this is a trigger for me from my childhood. That's why I'm feeling upset. Mhm.
Mhm.
And it gets easier over time. And then also using your intuition too. Sometimes I'll look back and I'll be like, why did I react such? Oh, it's this piece. And I feel like I can hear it quicker as I practice it.
Yeah, keyword right there, practice, right?
Yes, right. That's self reflection and teaching our kids how to recognize those pieces. And if it is appropriate, sharing with your kids. I'm sorry I reacted in that moment. It felt really intense in my body when you hit your sister, and it kicked into me. I wanted it to stop. And I don't like yelling. I'm sorry I yelled. I know you were having a response to something else. And sometimes I'll work with my kid. What do you think we could do to fix this? How do you think your body needs to learn about this so it doesn't go there next time? Yeah. So I think you had mentioned earlier, was reading, you had mentioned co-regulation, and that can
Mm,
be really hard if we're not in that regulated state ourselves. Thoughts on
yeah.
this?
Yeah. So that's when, and to be fair, I'm not a mother right
Right.
now. So I do want to acknowledge that I'm not currently in a position where I'm raising a child. I am in a position where I am working very closely to my partner and to his parents. And
Mm,
so it's almost like it's different, but it's also not really. Like there are similarities in it. And I find that as long as I take the time to do the work on myself and I regulate myself, and so if I'm consistently regulated, I have more capacity for the times when there are explosions around me, when other people maybe are not regulated. It's almost like my duty to be regulated. And
mhm,
so I'm consistently doing the practices. I'm consistently using my tools to be able to maintain regulation. And when I have a trigger, I will deal with it right there in the moment. I
mhm,
will I will acknowledge it. I will move it through my body. And even if I have to go take a moment to myself, really quick run to my bedroom, do what I need to do, have a good cry, do however it needs to move through me,
mhm,
because I find that if I can do that, then I get to be that role model for those around me where they can see, oh, there's another way. Oh, I felt that. I saw that emotion rise up within her. I saw her get triggered, her move through it. And so it's again, it's like teaching by example and co-regulation. I worked at a daycare right out, like I was in high school. I think I was 15 and I worked there for years. I was in the toddler. And there was a child who just very physical. And he would hit whenever he'd get really upset and really mad and really angry. And I would get upset. Like, my immediate reaction during this time would be like, I want to grab him, I want to yell, I want to
mhm,
do something. Like it's true, you don't do that.
mhm,
And I found that would almost amplify it. It would amplify the energy. And I think back to even the times when I was a child and there was violence in my home. And then I would go out there and I'd be screaming and yelling, and there'd be like, it would just amplify it. And so being able to be that calm person is going to help another person, whether it's a child, whether it's another adult, whether it's one of our elders, whoever it is, as long as we can maintain this level of groundedness and centeredness, it's pretty profound. I also worked as a massage therapist. And I found that as long as I was feeling safe in my body, if I was calm, grounded, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. There was something really profound that would happen when someone would come in. Maybe they'd been sitting in traffic, they had a rough day at work, and they're feeling really frazzled. They got this pain on their neck, they're like all these things, and they'd come in and they lay down, and all I'd have to do was put my hands on them, And then their system would then sync up with my system. It's like the way that the nervous systems communicate together, they
Mm.
sync up. And that's like this idea of co-regulation, where it's like my system can now mingle with yours. So it's actually happening on like a nervous system level.
Mm.
So it's
That's
like really, it like personally, I feel like it's really important for anyone, whether we're moms, sisters, daughters, granddaughters, like whatever, whoever, even men, that's not even just to say it's like a woman's responsibility, but
mm.
to be able to do the work that we need to do to
Yeah.
take care of ourselves. And that work, when I say work, it's going to look different for everybody.
Okay. What does it, if I was having a moment and say somebody kicked their dad and I needed to let it out, and I went into the bedroom to take a minute, like my husband was taking care of the kids and I was able to leave safely with the kids being watched. What's something I could do? Do you have any idea? I know it's personal if you have different triggers or such, but I'm just thinking, what's like a activity or an idea, or do you?
I guess I break it. Yeah, it's really going to depend on everybody's capacity,
Mm,
especially in the moment, right?
sure.
But if we were to break it down to the actual moment when it happened,
Mm-hmm.
and let's say that this child kicked his father, and it's what is the reaction that happens within my body when I watch that and I see that? And if it's, let's say it's like a wave of emotion and I want to react and I want to say no and I want to go
Yeah.
and grab him, right? That's
Yeah.
usually how it goes, right? There's this
Yeah.
wave of emotion that rises up. And it's okay. How present can I be with that emotion? And rather than reacting and being reactive towards it, how can I create more capacity in my body to receive the emotion because it's valid, it's present, it's moving through me,
Mm,
but I don't necessarily need to let it move me. I don't need to let it control me. I don't need to let it create this kind of also reactive response. Like, how can I be the pattern interruption?
mhm,
And I'll come back to like my experience when that happens. It's
mm,
sometimes I have to white knuckle it
mm.
and but make sure that I'm breathing, right? Because then otherwise that emotion's going to get trapped into us. So it's a really like
Oh.
fine tune. And this is the stuff that I do with my clients is teaching them how to actually move an emotion through the body like a full circuit. So that way it doesn't get stuck, but it's also not actually ruling us. It's not creating these reactions, these knee-jerk reactions that we don't necessarily want. So it's like, how can I be so present with that emotion? And maybe
Mhm.
take a moment, maybe
Yeah.
take a moment to like breathe. And one of my favorite exercises to do is when we feel like an emotion rises. And if you can start to track it and start to name where it's coming from, let's say this emotion is always coming from like the solar plexus. Let's say it's coming from right there. And it's
Yeah.
this feeling and it's this, oh my God, like I got it. It's creating this response, right? And it's okay.
Mhm.
I feel this in my body. How can I and it's a ball of energy. How can I disperse that throughout my entire body? How can I bring that out to the tips of my fingers and down to the tips of my toes? And how can I be so present with it and allow it to fully move through my body? And it's you gotta lean into it. I don't know if you've ever
Mm.
had a massage
Mhm.
or have you ever
Yeah.
had what like when someone finds a knot,
Yeah.
like a knot, and if you have a skilled practitioner, they'll find it and they'll pin it down and
Yeah.
they'll lean into it. And it's, oh
Totally.
God, like I feel that. I
Ooh.
feel like, yeah, there's a lot of sensation and you just
Mhm.
breathe. That's what it's like. It's like being able to
Mm.
find that spot, but we're the practitioners and it's an emotion. And so it's like, how can I find just the right leverage to lean into it and allow it to move through me, but to be present with it enough so that I can still breathe.
Mhm.
And it sometimes is a very uncomfortable moment, a couple of moments,
Yeah.
but being able to be so present with it. And then And then after that, because it takes about 90 seconds for an emotion to complete a circuit within the body as it
Mhm.
comes up and then moves through the body, about 90 seconds.
Mhm.
So that's a 90 seconds of just being for a moment, just taking a moment before and taking some breaths, and then being able to move from that space of being like, okay, I moved through my own trigger, I moved through my own emotion. I'm now finding this place of regulation within myself. And now I can go have a conversation of, hey, what's going on? What's happening? Are
Yep.
you okay? What do you need right now? Because I think oftentimes when children are reacting like that, it's what if they're needing something, but they don't have the words to explain it. They don't know the words of this is what's happening and this is what I'm feeling. And sometimes it's too overwhelming. And so it comes out in those ways, like those knee-jerk reactions that we have when we feel
Mhm.
those emotions. I
Yeah.
think that also goes back to, yeah, I don't know. Did that answer the question?
It totally did. I think for me, breathing is one that I always stop. And it's interesting because my kids will stop the breathing, especially my son. And we're like, breathe, you gotta breathe. He's no, like he just has the build, he wants to just keep building it up to get the reaction from us and just like explode. Like he wants that explosion to move that energy through.
Mm,
But I
mhm.
love the way that you're describing this because I have the similar feelings that he does. And so I think really working to get that breathing going will really help.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
love
totally.
like naming. There's that, it's like a Daniel Siegel author mentions name it to tame it. And
Mm,
with the kids, I'm like, I will always say, because I don't want it to be an accusatory. So I'm like, I'm noticing that your fists are clenched or you're taking action at dad. Something's going on. Like, how can I help you right now? And sometimes they'll say whatever it is, you're not listening to me right now. You only listen to brother for my daughter or something like that. And then I can, if I listen to her, that's oftentimes the reason my 6-year-old will have her explosive moments. It's we're not listening. We're not identifying with her problem. She just wants to tell us the problem. She doesn't want us to fix it. She wants us to say, I'm so sorry you're going through that. How can I help you? Do you want a hug? Things like that.
mm,
So
mhm.
it's interesting. We're thinking about it at an adult level too, but there's that piece of I want to work through it, but I also need you here with me, helping me work through it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, totally. That's like the never-ending story of the male and the female too. Because I feel like
Oh,
oftentimes, like when I have something big in me and I like, and I'll go to my partner and then he's okay, but what do you like? What should we do? Or he'll try to like fix it. And I'm like, no, I don't want you to fix it. I just
hmm
want you to be with me. I just want hold me, touch my arm or something. Like, let me know you're here.
yeah.
And he doesn't get it. There's a part I can see it. There's a part of him that wants to like
Yep.
reach this ultimate truth of what is, and these emotions don't make sense. And I'm like, really, I just
Mhm.
want you to be present. And so he's a great guy. And so he's okay, I'll touch your arm, I'll nod my head, I hear you.
Yep. Totally. Yes, I agree with the feminine and the masculine. I found that as well. And I also have found it like as an adult, even talking to my mom about something. I want you to understand how hard it can be parenting my two kids right now. I don't need you to try to fix it. I don't need multiple articles on neurodiversity, or I don't need you to send me these things. I need you to connect with me and understand
Hmm.
that maybe I was an easy kid. You keep telling me I was an easy kid. I was made to be an easy kid.
Mm,
I thought that was my role, was to be an easy kid, to be quiet, to be easy because you've been through a lot
mm,
in your life. Yeah, so just I think also in our own parenting journey we find that for ourselves again, like you we had talked about.
yeah.
Yeah, I love so many of the things you're saying. And do you have any tips on finding the trigger? If we're not connected with is it connecting to our, I guess, what would be your mindset on finding the trigger for parents or humans?
Yeah.
That's a big question.
It is a really big question.
But in our parenting journey, maybe number one step is like acknowledging. And I don't know if you have any pieces that you feel drawn toward with that, or maybe the story that I told in that, like, I'm realizing, hey, I have a podcast now. I have a lot of voice, getting my voice out because I felt like I didn't as a child. But yeah, those pieces, letting my kids have their voice, seeing them
Mm.
for who they truly are, allowing them to tell me who they are instead of being like, you're so easy. Or,
Mm.
yeah, I don't know. I was thinking of those pieces too.
I'm still marinating on what you said about the trigger. Like, how do you find a trigger?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and I feel, do you know what your triggers are?
I think for
Like, and you
me,
don't have to share them,
sure. I'm
but just
trying
to,
to think if I know them all. I don't know if I always do. I think for me, I'm thinking in my mind, like, what is the trigger? Why do I have that eruption when one kid hurts the other or hurts an adult?
Mhm.
I don't
So
know if I know the trigger for that.
oftentimes they come from the subconscious. So it's
Mm.
an unconscious response generally. Usually like we can know what our trigger is, but we don't know, but then it's hard to see it in the moment because then it turns into
Yeah.
an unconscious response, right?
Yeah.
Like those knee-jerk reactions when we react from a like an emotional response, that's an unconscious response. So it's
Okay.
all very much like happening in the subconscious. And the thing about the unconscious is you can't see it. You
Mm.
can't see it until you have it reflected for you. So having conversations with your partner, maybe having conversations with your children, and then you get to discover, oh, that's a trigger. That's my trigger. I'm trying to think of if I have an example of what a trigger of mine is. So I grew up in a fairly violent household. So for me, any kind of like physical, like if anyone's trying to hold me down or do something that I don't like physically with my body, and that's a trigger for me. And
Mhm.
I have been known to snap from that, like it like that kind of knee-jerk reaction.
Mhm.
But I'm like, okay, so I know what my trigger is. And that came from doing a lot of work, hiring a lot of mentors, having a lot of coaches. I went to therapy for a little while. And it's so I think the thing about our triggers or even just anything that is unconscious, like it really can, unless we're diving really deeply into dreams, but even then, we still need to be able to have something to reflect back to us because we can't always see it.
Mhm.
And then as you start to pinpoint what the trigger is, then becomes the game, like the process of, okay, now how do I lean into it? How do I start to break up the pattern of this happens and then I react like this? How do I break up that pattern? And you just start to collapse time a little bit of, okay, I know what my trigger is. I'm going to go through a couple more interactions that are going to bring up this trigger to for healing, right? It's because there's something that's unresolved within us and it's wanting to seek resolution. So it's coming up for a purpose. And I think even just having that mindset about a trigger of it's not anything, I don't know, it's not like I need to get rid of it. I need to, like, there's not this magic pill that's going to take it away. It's a process and it's a journey. And being able to identify it and then start to break it down to, okay, what happens as soon as I know I'm triggered? What's the first thing that happens in my body? And that's the process that I go through is being able to identify like what's happening in my body. What's the first thing to go into contraction?
Mhm.
And then from there, it's like a domino effect, right? There will be one piece of our body that's going to contract, and then maybe some other pieces, and then it's going to come out in some kind of arms or legs or voice or everything. So, yeah, I think obviously curiosity is going to be the big one and seeing
Mhm.
it as this opportunity for healing rather
Yep.
than, oh, I just need to make this stop.
Yep.
Because trying to make it stop is only going to perpetuate it. And and this makes me think about the co-regulation. What
Mhm.
if we were to co-regulate with the triggers?
Mhm.
And rather than trying to encourage someone or a child, just breathe. What if we just sat there with them and we're breathing? Because if children do, if they model what we do rather than what we say, and we were just there and very present, we didn't even have to say anything. We could just be breathing, making
Yep.
it audible, whatever, and just sit there and just breathe. And it takes a little bit, but eventually their system is going to link up with that system. And so, what if we treated the trigger in the same way of, oh, okay, like I see you, right?
Mhm.
It's like holding like another part of ourselves. It's like this is inner child work too. And
Mm-hmm.
depending on
Yeah.
where this trigger could be anywhere in the journey, it could be an older version of us, it could be a younger version of us, but holding it in that same way, the way that we would a child of what's up?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? What are you feeling? And then just breathe with it and watch it. That's how I would approach that, I'd say.
I love it. That's so helpful. Thank you. I know my question was very big in the scenario, right? It was a big question. I feel like my daughter comes to me with questions like that, these big questions of who are we? Where are we from? I'm like, okay,
Oh my
that's
God.
gonna take a minute.
I love
So
it.
yes, I
Yeah.
appreciate Frankie.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Guided up
Yeah. I
my
love it.
sleep.
I love the questions that like get me to think too and like really dig deeper of like, how do you even answer
I
that?
know, I know. It's amazing opportunities for growth and reflection. And that's this podcasting journey for me. It's been so wonderful. And I have a personal question I wanted to ask you. What are your thoughts on Kundalini?
Mm.
So I
What are
had
my
that
thoughts?
since I did Reiki and then I started doing my meditation and I noticed I had all of these movements and I'm like, what is going on? It was after having my son and then studying Reiki. And I
Mm.
started to, my mom and I finally, my mom has it as well. We finally were able to name it. It didn't tame it though. No, but
Can't.
I've heard interesting things. I just wanted to connect with you on that if anybody's having that.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love this. This lights me up. Yeah. What you said about being able to name it didn't tame it. I think there's something about it just to say naming it to tame it. I believe in naming it, but I don't believe in taming it.
Mhm.
I don't believe in taming it. I think trying to tame it is going to create a lot of problems, a lot of physical ailments, a lot of maybe even
Wow.
psychological issues as
Wow.
well. Kundalini is the energy that's located at the base of the spine. This is connected to our sexuality. This is connected to our sensuality, to our creativity. This is like the primal life force energy that lives inside of us.
Mm.
And over, I don't even know how long. I don't even know how long. Like, we can say that it's the patriarchy. We can easily blame society and the world that we're living in now as to why so many people are cut off from their vitality,
Mm.
from who they truly are, from this Kundalini energy that lives inside of us. And I think for me, that's the least interesting part of the conversation. And it's more, okay, how do we nurture this? How do
Mhm.
we bring it forth? How do we, again, I feel like everything, especially these days, comes back to how do we increase our capacity to experience it? Because I think a lot of bodies have been taught to cut it off, have been taught to fear it, have been taught to reject it. And so the capacity is it's like this. And then there's this kind of big bubbling energy happening inside, which is the Kundalini energy, and it's
Yeah.
moving and it's undulating through us. And if we're not moving with that,
Mhm.
it's I don't think that it will go away. I don't think it will stop. It will come
Yeah.
out in different ways. It'll start to seep out in ways that are maybe not healthy. It'll seep out in ways
Mhm.
that are maybe unconscious, that could potentially, I don't know, cause harm. I don't know exactly. But yeah, it's a really powerful energy, and being able to
Mm.
remember who we really are and the power that we have as human
Yeah.
beings, as really creative, energetic, yeah, beings. It's really profound, and it really excites me to know that there are a lot of people who are connecting to this energy, and this energy that is
Yeah.
actually like getting activated and turned on. I think that there's many different thoughts as to what's happening, whether it's astrologically, cosmically, whatever's happening on the planet, solar flares, 5G, like you name it. There's just so many things that are happening that are altering our energetic capacity
Mhm.
and being able to move with it. And so if we think about Kundalini energy and how it's a serpent, snake-like energy, right?
Yeah.
This is
Yep.
like, how does your body want to move it? How does your body
Mhm.
want to move with it? Or how does it want to move your body? And you can play with these different ways and how you want to relate to it or how it relates to you
Mm.
and being able to move it through the body, right? And so playing with it, like if you can feel it moving in your body, you said you felt, what did you feel?
I'm doing it right now. When I first got it, it was like turning my head like up and down. Now I get it. The time where I really feel it release is during when I'm doing Qigong, like a group Qigong class I go to
Mm,
weekly. And I love
hmm.
it because it's a nice movement and it comes out and it just moves with it. Or sometimes when I'm
Yeah.
meditating too, I get it. So
Mm.
I'm learning to embrace it and let it out and it's growing into different versions. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's so exciting. That's powerful. That's so
yeah.
powerful. Yeah, I think it probably looks different for everybody. But I
Mm,
think oftentimes it's definitely this like energy that's like very felt, right, in the base of the spine or even just up
Yep.
the spine.
Yep.
Sometimes it gets stuck a little bit like behind maybe the
Interesting.
heart or the occiput area, which is the base of the
Mhm.
skull.
Yep.
And I think it's like encouraging. It's very energetic, but it's also very visceral. And so being
Mhm.
able to move it through the body, I think is a really powerful practice. And stuff like Qigong, obviously there's Kundalini yoga, which
Ooh, yeah, I have
was
to try
created
that.
for that. Hmm.
Yeah, I haven't tried it yet, but I definitely need to look into it. It would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Frankie, thanks so much for answering my random questions and following along on my journey. I love it. And I love you mentioned that you do some business or some practices with helping business ladies starting their entrepreneur journeys. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's, I guess, more what I'm doing right now. I have a mentorship that I'm walking women
Yeah.
through. And a lot of it is really rooted in some of the conversation that we had today and being able to
Mm,
understand triggers, how to honor emotions and how to move them through the body, and how to be able to create this structure within the body that creates a system to where you can move through it naturally and be really present. And so it becomes almost like ingrained, right? It's like creating this
mhm,
new neurology to be able to move these emotions and move these triggers and move old trauma, old
mhm.
stagnant stories, whatever it is, whatever we may
Yep.
be holding on to, that is keeping us from actually being able to show up in the way that we really freaking want to.
Love it.
That's really all it is. And yeah, and a lot of what I'm doing is being able to do that foundational work. And then, of course, walking women through the process and helping them be able to figure out how to work with clients, how to fine tune their skills working with clients, how to set up payment plans, how to do all that stuff and actually get to the point where they are being able to really develop the service that they're here to offer through their own
Mhm,
transformation and through their own really unique way of working in the world
mhm.
and then offer that. So,
That's so wonderful. I've been on that journey myself and doing a lot of that myself at home. And so it's really powerful when we can bring that into our business side. Yeah, I love that.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll include all of your information in our show notes today where they can find you and they should go follow you on Instagram because I love it. It's been a journey. So thanks so much for being here, Frankie. I love chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Carrie. It's so good to be here. It's so good to connect with you and yeah, have this conversation. It was nice and juicy.
Juicy to say the least. Thank you,
Hmm.
Frankie. That's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in, Changemakers. This is Carrie. And if you haven't done a review for us, 5 stars and a little few words about what you've enjoyed in our podcast episodes, we would really appreciate it. If you guys would like to ever message me, I would love any questions you have or any feedback at info@hearttoheartlife.com. We also have a brand new website, which we're super excited to share. It's hearttoheartlife.com. Thanks so much for tuning in and happy life, happy times, Changemaker families. Please remember that the information shared on this podcast is educational in nature and does not constitute licensed mental health advice. If you need such advice, you should speak with a licensed professional about your unique situation. Thanks so much, happy listeners.